Daryl Morey speaks. On Thursday, Daryl Morey appeared on 97.5 The Fanatic, as well as the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast, and talked a lot about the Sixers offseason, talked about Joel Embiid and his health status, as well as Paul George and his status with the team, talked about his own job security, how he thought he did this past season, and his plans to correct what was a disastrous year for the Sixers heading into this offseason. So we're going to react to everything he had to say on both shows yesterday and kind of my takeaways on what he had to say. But before we do, another reminder here on the show that we will be going live for the NBA Draft Lottery, which gets underway at 7 p.m. Eastern on Monday. We'll be live on the show a half hour before the start of the program at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Pacific. It'll be myself and Chase Sr. returning to 76ers Now. You won't want to be anywhere else as we react to, hopefully, the Sixers landing the number 1 overall pick on Monday night. So be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you are notified when we do go live. All right, let's get into what Morey had to say first. Talked about his success, because he was asked, why should Sixers fans trust you as the guy moving forward to turn this team around? And Morey said, look, this is the first losing season I have ever had. More deep playoff runs than pretty much any other executive in the league. I've never been in the lottery before until now. I'm pretty good at the winning thing. Now, look, he's not technically wrong. Like, his teams generally with Houston and with Philly have had a lot of success, and they've been very good in the regular season. And even with Houston, they made a couple of deep runs in the postseason. And, of course, before this year, the Sixers had some playoff success, but still never made a conference finals. But that kind of, to me, Daryl Morey, is like, you're not looking at it big picture. Like, you've never won the big one. You've never won the title. So, while, yes, you do have a track record of winning in the regular season and when it matters, like, you can't just ignore last season. It's very much like, what have you done for me lately? And I do think he can turn things around, but he's got to show me. And I kind of think he's on the hot seat heading into this season. But he is right. He has had a lot of success. But now that he's facing something he hasn't faced before, how does he respond? And Morey talking about next season, how he sort of plans to overhaul the roster and get this team back to their winning ways, had this to say. I would say the roster next year is going to be much stronger. One thing when you have a disaster season is, how do you take advantage of it? You want to give yourself a chance at a high pick in the draft, which we have. Next year, our roster will be much more athletic and younger, with Quentin Grimes, who is a free agent, so sounds like he'll be back. Justin Edwards, Adem Bona, Jared McCain, potentially a top draft pick. We're going to have a healthier team. Don't know how you can just so definitively say that. So I would say hang in. We feel your pain, fans, and let's play this out next year. We feel very strongly about next season. Look, there's no doubt, like we've talked about this before in the show, the roster Daryl Morey put together next year was too old, was too injury prone. So heading into next year, he's said before, heading into this offseason, that the priority is to get younger, to get more athletic, to ensure that you're not relying on all these older players. And look, with this core, Quentin Grimes, talking about the young core, of course, Grimes, Maxey, McCain, Edwards, Bona, like I've talked about it before, they're not in as horrible of a spot as a lot of fans would lead you to believe, right? The Sixers do have a lot of young talent, and that's why I kind of do tend to agree with Morey that you should be a little more optimistic heading into next season, although, of course, it all does come back to the health. And as I mentioned a little earlier, I'm not so sure how Daryl Morey can be so definitive that they're going to have better injury luck next year, because there's just really no way of knowing. And we'll get to more on Embiid here in a little bit. But Daryl Morey, more on last season, I put this on me. My thinking was, how do I get this group healthy and into the playoffs? How do I have playoff level players? Generally, those are players with playoff experience, ones that sort of round out, can shoot, things like that. What I did not do well was make sure we had the youth and the athleticism to get through the regular season, put us in that position. That's something we will do next year. So we'll see if Morey does deliver on that promise this offseason of bringing in younger players, replacing some of the older, more injury-prone vets that were not able to get through an entire season last year. Think of the Andre Drummonds, who dealt with a brittle toe injury, was never really able to get it going, and was injured for a large portion of the year. Think of Reggie Jackson, who, played okay, ended up trading him away anyways. Your Eric Gordons, who, when he was finally starting to hit his stride in January, got injured, missed the rest of the year. Paul George, of course, you can lump into that category, as well as veterans who Morey thought will get all these experienced, older, playoff level guys that by the time we get there, will be fine, because they had thought, it's a foregone conclusion the Sixers will be in the playoffs. And I think all of us as well thought there's no question the Sixers will be in the playoffs. But you have to win regular season games to get into the postseason. And with all these older guys breaking down, they did not do that. So I think we've already seen Morey do some of this by trading for Jared Butler, trading for Quentin Grimes, getting younger, getting more athletic. So we'll see what he does in free agency to continue that trend. Now we're going to talk about Joel Embiid, because Morey did touch on Joel Embiid's health following the surgery, the arthroscopic surgery he had just a couple of weeks ago, and this is what Morey had to say there. It looks optimistic. He's with a doctor who worked with Kawhi Leonard. He was up in New York working with him this week, working every day at the facilities, working hard, doing whatever he can to get back out on the floor. His issues are not like I broke my arm, it heals, you come back. This is more of a complex case where these things can either trend in a good direction over time or a bad direction, but we believe they will trend in a good direction. But look, nobody knows what his future will be. We're optimistic, but nobody knows. We have a wide range of outcomes. Again, we're optimistic, but part of sports is to not know. We are maybe the most unknown team in the NBA. That's not something I would want to be saying about my franchise, is that we're the most unknown team in the NBA, but unfortunately it's true because of Joel Embiid. I'm glad he finally said this, because especially even like with just the start of that quote and with what we've heard from Nurse, we've heard from Morey and the Sixers organization over the past couple of months, it's been a lot of optimism and, we'll get this done and we'll get Embiid back out there. So I'm kind of glad Morey at the end there did say, like, we don't 100% know for certain, because as we've mentioned on the show, Joel Embiid's injury is more of a condition than an injury, right? There's not one procedure that's going to fix what's going on in his knee, and that's why they haven't been able to fix it thus far. So honestly, I know a lot of fans, and me included, I want to know what's going on with Joel Embiid's knee and where he's at, but truthfully, I don't think we'll know until he gets back out there on the court next season, and we can see if he can string together a stretch of games where he is healthy. But going back to what Morey said as well, working with a doctor that worked with Kawhi Leonard was out for a while, didn't look like he was going to be able to come back, be the player he once was. But look, Kawhi Leonard this past season came back, was healthy, and played well after a lot of people counted him out. So maybe they can figure out something to get Joel Embiid back out there. Speaking of getting Joel Embiid back out there, Morey was also asked if he thinks we've already seen the best of Embiid, but Morey said, I don't think that's written. I don't think we know that. I think MVP Joel Embiid is still potentially there. We won't know until we go through the season, but he's in an age where lots of players still play to their prime, and an age where lots of players, even with issues, have come back and played at a high level. So no, I do not think that. Now, if you're asking me, and look, I'm one of the biggest Joel Embiid truthers that you'll meet out there, right? I love the guy. I'll always stick by him. I'll always support him despite, his shortcomings and his flaws. I can acknowledge where he struggled and his part in not being able to stay healthy and not playing well in the postseason. But I don't think we're going to see Embiid reach the level that he was during his MVP season and before he got hurt in 2023, 2024. Do I think he can still be a very good player? Yes, I think he can be if he were to get healthy. But I don't ever think he's going to be 100% healthy again. That also factors into it. I think even if he gets to 85%, 90% healthy, he can still be a really dominant player in this league and a really good player in this league, but never quite to an MVP level. Regardless, I'm just hoping that we can see him back out there getting healthy, because Daryl Morey also said that they are committed to Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey. There's a crowd out there that wants potentially to move on from Embiid, potentially move on from Paul George this offseason, but Morey has now reiterated for the second time that they will not be doing that. They're building around these three, so we can kind of, kill all those conversations that we've had about maybe moving on as of right now. Speaking more on this roster, Morey also said that Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond, and Eric Gordon are all likely to return. Now, it's important to note that they all have player options, so it's not even really up to Morey. It's up to these players. I do expect Drummond and Oubre to opt in. I don't expect Eric Gordon to opt in. He can get more money if he opts out. Even if Drummond and Gordon do opt into their options, I'd hope to send them off. Morey said we want to get younger, get more athletic, so I think you'd want to replace those two. But I would love if Kelly Oubre does return. And we'll end with this that Morey had to say about the Boston Celtics, because I hate the Boston Celtics and I love to make fun of them when they're down. As of this recording, they're down 2-0 to the New York Knicks. But he also brings up a good point about team building and roster construction that is very, very prevalent in the NBA today. Morey on the Celtics. The Celtics aren't going to be able to keep that team together. A lot of these teams that are doing well are going to have challenges keeping their teams together, whereas we're going to have a younger, more dynamic group around 3 top players. So obviously we'll see how it plays out. We're going to need injuries to go our way, but otherwise we feel very good about the team next year. And he brings up a good point. You look where Boston's at right now, and teams like Boston. I'm thinking about Denver, for example, another team that was kind of going through a similar thing. Phoenix as well. These teams that have super high tax bills that are trying to compete with these stars that are getting paid a lot of money. And look, for Boston, it worked out, right? They were able to get all these contracts together at a certain time where they were all out there on the floor, and of course they made the championship run last year. So it's worth it at the end of the day for them. But if they don't win it again this year, if they go out in this round by the Knicks or next round potentially, they're going to have to make some changes. It's already been reported. Shams Charani's reported that they're going to have to make some changes. Possibly Kristaps Porzingis, Andrew Holiday on the way out. So as it pertains to the Sixers, I get where Daryl Morey is coming from, and I get his strategy, per se, of wanting to get these young guys in there. But at the same time, Daryl, you are paying Joel Embiid a ton of money. You are paying Paul George a ton of money. You are paying Tyrese Maxey a ton of money. So you're not all that different from some of these teams. But hopefully this does wake him up a little bit and let him know, you can't just go out and pay all these top guys all this money like he's always wanted to do. I'm hoping he can, take a look in the mirror this offseason and look at the kind of players they need and play it smart financially to be able to have a team that can have sustained success, because we haven't really seen the ramifications of it with the new CBA yet. That's going to come over these next few years. You want to be able to contend, but you also don't want to be in all those restrictions with the cap and all that. So just get younger, get more athletic, and we'll see if this team can make a run for it heading into next season. Be honest with me before we hop on out of here. Do you trust Daryl Morey as this team's president of basketball operations to retool this team, get them ready for a potential championship run next year, at least a playoff run, just to get this team turned around? Give me Y for yes. Give me an N for no. Also, Sixers jerseys, I continue to tell you about this great deal that's going on over at Fanatics, because all Sixers jerseys, all different kinds, current players, former players, current styles, throwback styles, they're all on sale for different amounts. 25%. I've even seen some jerseys up to 50% off. If you go to chatsports.com/76jerseys, you can browse through all the different options, see what the different sales are for any jersey you might want, and get one that you want today. Again, that's chatsports.com/76jerseys. Be sure to get them now, because that deal will not apply forever. All right, that'll do it on today's show. One last reminder that we are going live for the lottery on Monday night. So subscribe, turn on those notifications, and hopefully we'll see you there.